The Great Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with tension. 47 different alien species had gathered on Nexus Prime, their home base floating in the dark space between stars. The air smelled strange, mixing the breath of creatures from across the galaxy. Some had scales, others had tentacles, and a few looked like walking crystals. But they all shared one thing. They were angry about humans. Hyunwoo sat quietly in the human chair, watching everything. He looked calm on the outside, but inside his heart was beating fast. The other aliens thought he was just a simple ambassador from Earth. They had no idea what he really was. "The humans are growing too fast," hissed Speaker Veltar, the leader of the council. His kind looked like tall, thin ghosts made of blue light. 50 years ago, they could barely leave their own planet. Now they have colonies in 12 star systems. The Thraxian representative slammed his clawed fist on the table. Thraxians looked like giant lizards that walked on two legs. "They fight too much. Every world they touch becomes a military base. They build weapons everywhere they go. Their technology is primitive," added the Vorthak delegate, her voice coming from a machine since her people couldn't breathe the same air as others. "They still use metal bullets and chemical rockets. But they learn too fast. Give them another 100 years and they might become dangerous." Hyunwoo wanted to laugh but kept his face blank. These aliens had no idea what humans were really capable of. They saw only what Earth wanted them to see. High up in the visitor gallery, Kijun pretended to be a simple trade negotiator. His small recording device captured every word. The aliens never bothered to check human guests carefully. After all, what could primitive humans do to them? "I have seen their warships," growled the military commander from the hegemony forces. His people were covered in thick armor that grew from their skin. Slow, clunky things that would break apart if we looked at them wrong. One of our battle cruisers could destroy their entire fleet. More aliens spoke up, each one adding to the list of complaints about humanity. Humans expanded too fast. Humans asked too many questions about alien technology. Humans refused to follow the old rules that kept the galaxy peaceful and orderly. What really scared them was that humans didn't know their place. Every other young species that joined the galaxy accepted that the older civilizations were in charge. They followed orders, paid taxes, and stayed in their assigned areas of space. Humans did none of these things. "We gave them the gift of faster-than-light travel," said an alien that looked like a walking tree. "They should be grateful. Instead, they use it to spread like a disease." Speaker Veltar raised his glowing hand for silence. "The time has come to make a decision. Humanity must learn to follow the rules or face the consequences." The vote was quick. 44 species voted yes. Only 3 abstained, and those 3 were too afraid to vote against the majority. No one voted to protect humanity. "It is decided," Veltar announced. "War Marshal Klaxon will deliver our ultimatum. Humanity has 72 standard hours to surrender their independence and accept council oversight. If they refuse, the pacification fleet will teach them proper respect." Klaxon stood up slowly. He was massive, even for his warrior species. Scars covered his armored skin from 100 battles. His fleet had conquered 23 different civilizations. "It will be my pleasure," he rumbled. "Perhaps these humans will provide better sport than the last world we pacified." Hyunwoo finally spoke up. "May I ask what happens to human colonies during this pacification?" "Colonies that surrender immediately will be spared," Veltar replied coldly. "Those that resist will serve as examples to others who might question council authority." The meeting ended and aliens began filing out of the hall. They chatted excitedly about the coming war, already planning how to divide up human territory among themselves. Kijun slipped away in the crowd, his recording device now containing enough evidence to justify what was about to happen. Hyunwoo waited until the hall was nearly empty before standing. He walked slowly to the great window that looked out into space, where thousands of warships floated in perfect formation. The Council's pacification fleet was already gathering. Impressive, isn't it? Veltar had stayed behind. 3,000 vessels representing the combined military might of our 47 member species. "I almost feel sorry for your people. They are impressive," Hyunwoo agreed. "I'm sure Earth's leaders will be very interested to see them." Something in his tone made Veltar study the human more carefully. But what could one primitive human do against the combined might of galactic civilization? Meanwhile, deep beneath the Swiss Alps on Earth, an urgent meeting was beginning. The war room had been carved from solid rock during the early days of human space exploration. Its walls were lined with screens showing star maps, fleet positions, and tactical data that would have shocked the council members. Minho stood at the head of a conference table made from a single piece of asteroid metal. Around him sat the most dangerous humans alive, though few people in the galaxy knew their real names or faces. Admiral Sun Kyung commanded humanity's real space navy, not the handful of primitive ships the aliens had observed, but a fleet of advanced vessels hidden throughout human space. General Jae-hyun controlled the Planetary Defense Corps, including weapon systems the Council had never detected. Dr. Bora ran the most classified project in human history, something so secret that only 12 people knew its full scope. The transmission came in 20 minutes ago, Minho said, activating a holographic display. Veltar's image appeared, delivering the Council's ultimatum with cold arrogance. They want our surrender in 72 hours. How many ships? Sun Kyung asked. 3,000 according to our sources. Klaxon is commanding personally. Jae-hyun smiled grimly. Good. We've been waiting for him to come out of hiding. The biological weapons are ready, Dr. Bora reported. 47 different variants, each one designed for a specific species. Non-lethal, but highly effective. And the Prometheus array? Fully operational. We can target any point in the galaxy within minutes. Minho looked around the table at his team. These people had spent decades preparing for this moment. While the Council saw primitive humans struggling with basic technology, the real humanity had been building something far more sophisticated. They think we're weak because we use bullets and chemical rockets. Minho said, they don't understand that sometimes the old ways are better than their fancy energy weapons. They've forgotten what real war looks like. Are we really going to do this? Sun Kyung asked. There's no going back once we start. They made the choice for us, Minho replied. We offered peace, trade, cooperation. They answered with threats and ultimatums. Now they get to learn what humanity is really capable of. He pressed a button on the table. Across the galaxy, humans in hidden positions received a single coded message. Protocol 7 is active. On mining stations that weren't really mining stations, crews began preparing weapons that could crack planets. In research facilities disguised as civilian installations, scientists activated systems that could disable entire fleets without firing a shot. On cargo ships scattered throughout Council space, soldiers checked equipment that had been waiting years for this moment. Dr. Bora, how long do you need for final preparations? 18 hours. Sun Kyung. The fleet can be in position in 6 hours. Jae-hyun. Planetary defenses are already active. Let them come. Minho nodded slowly. Then we wait. Let the Council think they're dealing with frightened primitives for a few more hours. When they realize the truth, it will be too late. Outside, the Swiss mountains stood peaceful under a starry sky, but deep underground, humanity was preparing to change the galaxy forever. The Council had planned for war against a weak enemy. They were about to discover they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could imagine. The countdown had begun. Earth looked like it was falling apart. News broadcasts from every major city showed the same scenes. Crowds of panicked people running through streets, government officials giving confused speeches, and long lines of spaceships leaving Earth's orbital stations. The reporters spoke with shaking voices about humanity's darkest hour. The Council's ultimatum has sent shockwaves through human space, announced a news anchor from New Seoul. Behind her, families carried suitcases toward evacuation ships. Military experts say our forces are no match for the alien fleet approaching our solar system. On the planet Nexus Prime, Council members watched these broadcasts with satisfaction. Speaker Veltar particularly enjoyed seeing human leaders stumbling through press conferences, clearly overwhelmed by the situation. Look at them run, laughed the Thraxian representative. I thought humans were supposed to be brave warriors. Instead, they flee like frightened children. War Marshal Klaxon studied the tactical reports coming from his scout ships. Earth's military was pathetic. A few hundred outdated warships, orbital defense platforms that looked like they might collapse on their own, and ground forces using weapons his people had abandoned centuries ago. This will be over quickly, he told his staff officers. We might not even need the full fleet. A few hundred ships should be enough to break their spirit. What none of them realized was that they were watching the greatest performance in human history. In a secure facility beneath the Pacific Ocean, Insu coordinated the massive deception operation. His team had spent months preparing fake news reports, hiring actors to play panicked civilians and creating false military data for alien spies to discover. "How are we doing on refugee ship numbers?" he asked his assistant. 2,000 vessels have left Earth orbit in the past day. The Council scouts are tracking all of them. Insu smiled. Those ships carried Earth's deadliest weapons, but they looked exactly like civilian evacuation transports. Hidden among genuine refugees were soldiers, scientists, and enough firepower to level entire star systems. Captain Yunseo commanded one of those disguised ships. The Silent Guardian appeared to be a simple cargo vessel fleeing toward the outer colonies. In reality, it was one of humanity's most advanced warships, invisible to alien sensors and faster than anything the Council had ever built. "How many ships made it to the rendezvous points?" she asked her navigation officer. "All of them, Captain. Fleet units are now positioned in 47 different star systems. We're ready to strike." The Council had no idea that while they watched human ships flee from Earth, those same ships were taking up attack positions throughout their territory. Every major alien military base, government center, and industrial facility now had human forces hiding nearby. Back on Earth, the real preparations were happening far from alien eyes. Dr. Bora worked frantically in her underground laboratory, making final adjustments to humanity's most terrible weapon, the Prometheus Array. The project had begun 50 years earlier when humans first encountered alien technology. While publicly struggling to understand basic concepts like faster-than-light travel, human scientists had secretly been developing something far more advanced. "Quantum resonance field generators are online," reported her chief assistant. "We can now target molecular structures across galactic distances." "What about the biological weapons?" "All 47 variants are ready for deployment, each one designed specifically for a different Council species. They'll cause temporary paralysis and memory loss, but no permanent damage." Bora nodded. Humanity could have created weapons that killed, but they chose a different path. The goal wasn't genocide, it was teaching the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. In orbit around Jupiter, what looked like a simple mining station suddenly began unfolding like a metal flower. Hidden weapon systems emerged from fake asteroid miners. Solar collectors that had seemed designed for power generation revealed themselves as massive energy weapons. Similar transformations were happening throughout the solar system. Every civilian installation built during humanity's expansion had a secret military purpose. The aliens thought humans were primitive because they built things that looked simple. They never realized that the simplest solutions were often the most effective. Admiral Sun Kyung watched the alien fleet approaching from her command center on Luna. The Council ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons powered down because they expected no real resistance. "They're beautiful," she admitted to her tactical officer. "Too bad we're about to turn them into scrap metal." "Admiral, our stealth ships are reporting in. Every target is marked and ready." "And the home front?" "All planetary defense systems are active. If any alien ships make it through our initial strike, they won't reach Earth's surface." The countdown timer showed 36 hours until the Council's deadline. To outside observers, Earth looked defenseless. Refugee ships continued streaming away from the planet. Government officials made desperate pleas for mercy. Military units appeared to be retreating to defensive positions. But in the deep bunkers where humanity's real leaders worked, the mood was confident and deadly calm. Min-ho reviewed the final attack plans with his team. Every detail had been calculated, every possible alien response anticipated. They had studied Council military tactics for decades, learned from every battle the aliens had fought, identified weaknesses in their technology and training. The biological weapon deployment will begin simultaneously across all 47 homeworlds, Dr. Bora explained. Within hours, their governments will be unable to function. Their military command structure will collapse. "Our fleet units are in position," reported Sun Kyung. "When we strike, we'll hit every major Council military installation at the same time. They won't have time to coordinate a response." General Jae-hyun pulled up defensive plans for Earth itself. "If anything gets through the outer attacks, we have surprises waiting in the solar system. Those mining stations and research facilities aren't what they appear to be. And if somehow alien forces reach Earth," Min-ho asked, "then they'll discover that every human colony, every city, every small town has been preparing for this war since we first met. Aliens 50 years ago, the truth was that humanity had been preparing for this conflict since their first contact with galactic civilization. While publicly appearing grateful for alien gifts like faster-than-light travel, humans had secretly been reverse engineering every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. Crashed. Scout ships that aliens thought were accidents had actually been carefully orchestrated captures. Trade negotiations that seemed favorable to aliens had been designed to steal technological secrets. Even the human colonies that looked primitive and defenseless were actually weapons platforms disguised as civilian settlements. Chung Min had spent decades studying alien biology, not to help them as his public research claimed, but to find ways to disable them without causing permanent harm. Every species in the Council had genetic weaknesses that humans now understood perfectly. The refugee ships continued their apparent flight from Earth, but now they were reaching their real destinations. In the Thraxian home system, Captain Namok's vessel docked at what appeared to be a commercial space station. Within hours, his team would release biological agents that would paralyze the entire planet's government. Similar operations were beginning across Council space. Humans who had lived and worked among aliens for years suddenly revealed their true purpose. Research scientists became saboteurs. Trade negotiators became military commanders. Cultural exchange students became intelligence operatives. 12 hours until deadline, Minho announced to his team. "Are we ready?" Every person in the room nodded. They had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment. "Then let's give the Council exactly what they asked for," Minho said quietly. They wanted to see what happens when humanity is backed into a corner. They're about to find out. Outside, Earth's sun was setting on what appeared to be humanity's last day of freedom. But deep underground in facilities the aliens had never detected, the real Earth was preparing to show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. The Council thought they were about to crush a primitive species. Instead, they had awakened a predator that had been hiding among them for 50 years, learning their weaknesses and preparing for exactly this moment. War Marshal Claxon's fleet continued its approach, confident in their overwhelming advantage. In just a few more hours, they would learn the difference between what humans appeared to be and what they actually were. The lesson would change the galaxy forever. The Council's deadline passed in silence. War Marshal Claxon waited exactly 1 hour after the time limit before giving his orders. His massive fleet hung at the edge of Earth's solar system like a metal storm cloud, 3,000 ships ready to deliver the galaxy's judgment. "No surrender signal from Earth," his communications officer reported. "Their government channels have gone completely dark." Claxon smiled grimly. "Then they choose to learn the hard way. All ships advance to attack formation. Target their orbital installations first. Let them see their defenses crumble before we demand their final surrender." The alien fleet moved forward like a tide of destruction, ships from 47 different species flying together, their combined firepower enough to glass entire planets. They had done this many times before. Rebellious worlds always looked impressive until Council forces arrived. Then resistance crumbled quickly, but as they entered the solar system, something felt wrong. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, confusion in his voice. "I'm not detecting the human fleet." "What do you mean?" "They're not here. No ships, no defensive formations. The system appears empty except for civilian installations." Claxon studied his displays. Earth hung in space ahead of them, apparently defenseless. A few orbital stations dotted the system, along with what looked like mining facilities and research outposts. Nothing that could threaten a military force. "Where are their warships?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. Maybe they fled to their colony worlds?" It made sense. Faced with overwhelming force, the human military had probably retreated to make a last stand elsewhere. Claxon almost felt disappointed. He had hoped for at least some resistance to make this interesting. "Continue advance. We'll secure Earth first, then hunt down their scattered forces." That's when So Young triggered humanity's first surprise. Hidden throughout the solar system, installations that looked like harmless civilian outposts suddenly came alive. The mining station near the asteroid belt split open like a mechanical flower, revealing weapon batteries that could punch through the heaviest armor. Research platforms orbiting Jupiter dropped their disguises, transforming into massive missile launchers. Most shocking of all, the refugee ships that had been fleeing Earth for days suddenly appeared throughout the solar system. They had never left Advanced stealth technology had simply made them invisible to alien sensors. All ships weapons free, So-Young commanded from her hidden control center. Show them what Earth really looks like when it's angry. The first salvo hit Klaxon's advance guard like a hammer. Kinetic weapons traveling at nearly light speed tore through alien shields as if they weren't there. The Council's energy-based defenses had never been designed to stop solid projectiles moving that fast. Impossible, Klaxon roared as his flagship shook from multiple impacts. Their weapons are primitive. How are they penetrating our shields? His tactical officer's voice was shaking. Sir, they're not using energy weapons. These are physical projectiles, but moving faster than anything in our database. Our shields can't stop them. The second wave of attacks came from directions the aliens hadn't expected. Those harmless mining stations were launching clouds of micro-missiles that swarmed over Council ships like angry insects. Each missile was small, barely larger than a bullet, but there were millions of them and they struck with devastating precision. Emergency maneuvers, Klaxon ordered. All ships scatter and return fire. But the Council fleet's formations, so perfect and disciplined during their approach, became a weakness. Ships collided with each other as they tried to evade the unexpected attacks. Their weapons, designed for long-range energy combat, couldn't target the small, fast-moving human missiles effectively. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, humanity's real war was beginning. On the Thraxian homeworld of Drakmor, Admiral Tehun materialized his strike force directly above their primary military base. The aliens had never developed effective sensors for human stealth technology because they didn't know such technology existed. Target their command center, Tehun ordered. Kinetic bombardment full power. Tungsten rods dropped from orbit, accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic launchers. When they hit, the explosions looked like small nuclear weapons going off. The Thraxian military headquarters simply vanished in a pillar of fire and debris. Sir, alien ships are launching from the southern continent, his tactical officer reported. Let them come. They've never faced real human military technology. The Thraxian vessels were impressive by galactic standards, sleek, fast, and armed with powerful plasma weapons. But they had been designed to fight other energy weapon platforms. Against human ships that used physical projectiles and moved faster than alien sensors could track, they were helpless. Tehun's flagship opened fire with its main battery, a magnetic acceleration cannon that could launch projectiles at 10% of light speed. The Thraxian ships didn't even have time to raise their shields before the tungsten shells tore through their hulls. Enemy fleet destroyed, Weapons Control reported. Total engagement time, 4 minutes. Similar scenes were playing out across Council space as humanity's hidden strike forces revealed themselves. On every major alien world, humans who had been living as peaceful traders, researchers, and diplomats suddenly became military units with objectives they had been preparing to execute for decades. But the most devastating attack came from Earth itself. Dr. Bora stood in the Prometheus Array control room, watching displays that showed Council worlds throughout the galaxy. The quantum resonance network was humanity's greatest achievement. A weapon system that could target any point in known space instantly. All stations report ready, her chief technician announced. We have locks on 47 primary targets. Remember, we're not trying to kill them, Bora said. Set resonance frequency to disrupt molecular bonds in their ship hulls only. Leave life support systems intact. Understood. Firing in 3, 2, 1. Executing. The Prometheus Array sent quantum pulses across galactic space, arriving at their targets at exactly the same moment despite the vast distances involved. The energy waves were precisely tuned to disrupt the specific metal alloys used in Council ship construction. Across the galaxy, alien warships simply fell apart. Not destroyed by explosions or energy beams, but literally coming apart at the molecular level. Hulls separated into component atoms, leaving crews floating in emergency pods and wondering what had just happened to their vessels. War Marshal Klaxon watched in horror as his mighty fleet disintegrated around him. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were reduced to clouds of metallic dust in seconds. Emergency pods filled space as thousands of alien crew members found themselves stranded without their vessels. All ships report complete hull failure, his communications officer said in shock. We've lost 90% of the fleet, Cause unknown. This is impossible, Klaxon whispered. Humans are supposed to be primitive. How do they have weapons that can do this? His answer came from Captain Yoon Seo, whose stealth ship materialized directly in front of the alien flagship. War Marshal Klaxon, she said over the communication channel. This is Captain Yoon Seo of the Terran Defense Force. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Terran Defense Force? Klaxon sputtered. We've never heard of any such organization. That was the idea. We've been watching you for 50 years, learning everything about your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. Did you really think we were as primitive as we pretended to be? Around Klaxon's flagship, more human ships began appearing as their stealth systems deactivated. They moved with impossible grace, their hulls gleaming with technology the Council had never seen before. You used crude weapons to make us underestimate you, Klaxon realized. While we thought you were struggling with basic spaceflight, you were building all this. Humans are very good at misdirection, Yoon Seo agreed. We showed you exactly what we wanted you to see while hiding our real capabilities. Now surrender your remaining ships before we demonstrate more of our technology. But the devastation wasn't limited to space battles. On Council worlds throughout the galaxy, Namuk and other human agents were implementing the biological warfare phase of their plan. The viruses had been designed over decades of careful study. Each one targeted a specific alien species, causing temporary paralysis and memory loss without permanent damage. It was a weapon of mercy, devastating but not deadly. On the Vorthak, homeworld government officials suddenly found themselves unable to remember basic procedures. Military commanders forgot their training. Communications networks went silent as operators lost the ability to understand their own equipment. Similar scenes played out on 47 different worlds as humanity's biological weapons swept through alien populations. It wasn't genocide. The effects would wear off in a few weeks. But during those weeks, the Council's ability to coordinate any kind of response would be completely destroyed. Phase 1 complete, Minho announced from his command center deep beneath Earth. Alien military forces are neutralized. Government structures are paralyzed. Time for Phase 2. Which is? General Jae-hyun asked. Now we rebuild the galaxy the right way. In space around Earth, the few surviving Council ships hung powerless, among clouds of debris that had once been the galaxy's most feared fleet. War Marshal Klaxon's flagship was intact, but surrounded by the galaxy was silent. For the first time in over 1,000 years, no Council orders were being transmitted across space. No tribute ships carried wealth to Nexus Prime. No pacification fleets threatened rebellious worlds. The vast network of control that had held galactic civilization together for generations had simply stopped working. Wonsik stood in what had once been the Council's Grand Assembly Hall, watching repair crews fix the damage from humanity's assault. The floating city of Nexus Prime was now under human control. Its alien inhabitants either captured or fled to their homeworlds. Status report, he ordered his aide. All major Council military installations are secured. Resistance has been minimal. Most alien forces are still paralyzed by the biological weapons. The few that tried to fight discovered very quickly that it was hopeless. Wonsik nodded. The biological agents Dr. Bora had developed were wearing off now, but the psychological impact remained. Alien species that had dominated the galaxy for centuries suddenly found themselves helpless prisoners of the humans they had dismissed as primitive. In the detention center beneath Nexus Prime, the surviving Council members sat in cells designed for their specific physiological needs. Humans had been studying alien biology for 50 years, so they knew exactly how to keep their prisoners comfortable but secure. Speaker Veltar stared at the walls of his cell, his ghostly blue form flickering with emotion. How had this happened? The Council had ruled the galaxy since before humans discovered fire. They had technology beyond human understanding. Fleets that could destroy star systems, resources from 1,000 worlds. It's not possible, he whispered to himself. We are ancient. We are wise. We are powerful. How could primitives defeat us? His answer came from Ambassador Hyunwoo, who entered the detention area with a datapad in his hands. The human looked the same as always, quiet, polite, unremarkable. But now Veltar saw him with new eyes. "You were never just an ambassador," the alien said. "No," Hyunwoo agreed, pulling up a chair. "I'm Commander Hyunwoo of Earth Intelligence. I've been studying you and your people for 15 years. Impossible. Our security checked your background thoroughly. We gave you a background to check. Every document, every record, every witness, all carefully constructed to show you exactly what we wanted you to believe." Hyunwoo activated his data pad, showing images of council meetings, military plans, and secret communications. "We've been recording everything for decades." Veltar's form flickered more violently. "You've been spying on us since first contact. Of course. Did you think we would trust a galactic civilization that introduced itself by demanding tribute? We smiled, paid your taxes, and quietly prepared for the day you would try to destroy us. But your technology is primitive. Some of it, yes. We found that kinetic weapons work better against your defenses than energy beams. Chemical rockets are more reliable than your anti-grav systems. Nuclear power is cleaner than your zero-point generators. Sometimes the old ways are better." Hyunwoo stood up, looking down at the alien leader. "But we also developed technology you never imagined. Quantum resonance weapons, biological agents, stealth systems, artificial intelligence networks. While you were congratulating yourselves on being advanced, we were becoming something you couldn't understand." "What happens to us now?" Veltar asked quietly. "That depends on you. Humanity is offering the galaxy a choice: cooperation or isolation. Join our new order as equals, or stay on your worlds under our protection. But the old way of doing things is over." Across the galaxy, human forces were making similar offers to alien civilizations. The response varied dramatically depending on each species' history and culture. The Meridian Collective welcomed human leadership immediately. They had been oppressed by the Council for centuries, forced to provide food and resources while receiving nothing in return. When Captain Yoon Seo's forces arrived at their homeworld, the Meridian government formally requested human protection. "We pledge our loyalty to Earth," their leader declared through a translation device. "Show us how to build a better galaxy." Other species were more resistant. The hegemony forces had built their entire culture around military dominance. When human troops arrived at their fortress worlds, the aliens fought desperately despite being completely outmatched. General Jae-hyun watched the battle reports with sadness rather than satisfaction. "They're brave," he told his staff. "Stupid but brave. Too bad they chose the wrong side." "Should we increase force levels?" his tactical officer asked. "No. Let them exhaust themselves against our defensive positions. When they realize they can't win, they'll surrender. Then we can show them there's a better way to live than constant warfare." The pattern repeated across dozens of worlds. Some aliens submitted immediately, grateful to be free from council oppression. Others fought until they exhausted themselves, then accepted human rule. A few chose isolation, withdrawing to their homeworlds, and cutting all contact with the outside galaxy. But the most important changes were happening on Earth itself. Minho stood before a gathering of human leaders from across the colonies, addressing them via holographic projection from the underground command center that had become humanity's new seat of government. "The war is over," he announced. "In less than a week, we have completely dismantled a galactic government that ruled for over 1,000 years. But now comes the harder task, building something better." "What about the aliens?" asked the governor of New Taipei. "Can we trust them?" "Some of them, eventually. Others will need more time to adjust to the new reality. But we're not conquerors, we're liberators. The galaxy has been held back by the Council's oppressive policies for generations. Now we can show them what real civilization looks like." Dr. Bora activated her own projection from the medical facility where she was working around the clock. "The biological weapons are almost completely neutralized now. Alien populations are recovering their cognitive functions, but the psychological impact will last much longer." "Good," Minho replied. "They need to understand that their old way of life is gone forever. Fear will keep them cooperative while we establish new systems." "What about the species that choose isolation?" asked Admiral Sun Kyung. "We respect their choice. Any alien civilization that wants to stay on their homeworld and avoid galactic politics is welcome to do so. We'll maintain monitoring stations to ensure they don't develop weapons that could threaten others, but otherwise they can live however they want." The new galactic order was taking shape quickly. Human administrators, trained for decades in preparation for this moment, or establishing government offices on former council worlds. The old system of tribute and oppression was replaced with voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit. Trade networks that had been controlled by council bureaucrats were open to all species. Technology that had been hoarded by the ruling elite was shared freely. Worlds that had been strip-mined to provide resources for alien overlords were given the chance to rebuild and prosper. But perhaps the most important change was in how different species interacted with each other. Changmin worked in the new biological research center on Nexus Prime, collaborating with alien scientists who had previously been forbidden from sharing their knowledge. The Vorthak researcher across from him had spent centuries developing cures for genetic diseases, but council regulations had prevented her from testing them on other species. This treatment could save millions of lives, Changmin said, reviewing her data. Why didn't the council allow cross-species medical research? They said it was too dangerous, the Vorthak scientist replied through her translator. But I think they just wanted to keep us separate, competing instead of cooperating. Well, those days are over. Let's see what we can accomplish together. Similar scenes were playing out across human-controlled space. Scientists who had been rivals under the council system discovered they could achieve far more by working together. Artists from different species created new forms of beauty by combining their traditions. Engineers solved problems that had seemed impossible by sharing their different approaches to technology. The transformation wasn't without resistance. Some aliens, particularly those from species that had held high positions in the council hierarchy, struggled to accept their new status. They had gone from rulers of the galaxy to just another species under human authority. This is temporary, former War Marshal Klaxon told his fellow prisoners. Humans are primitives. They lack the wisdom to govern a galactic civilization. Eventually they will make mistakes and we can reclaim our rightful place. But as weeks turned to months, it became clear that humanity's victory was not a fluke. Human administrators proved to be fair and competent rulers. Human technology continued to advance at an incredible rate. And most importantly, the galaxy was becoming more prosperous and peaceful than it had been in centuries. Species that had been enemies for generations began to cooperate. Worlds that had been exploited by the Council started to rebuild. The fear and oppression that had defined galactic civilization for 1,000 years was being replaced by hope and opportunity. Status report, Minho requested during his daily briefing. Resistance is down to isolated incidents, reported Jae-hyun. Most alien populations Haoman V. 1 year later, the galaxy looked completely different. Ji-hoon stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above New Geneva, watching construction crews put the finishing touches on humanity's newest achievement. The Galactic Unity Station would serve as the meeting place for representatives from over 200 species, not just the original 47 council members, but dozens of civilizations that had been discovered and liberated from isolation. Hard to believe it's only been a year, said his assistant, reviewing the progress reports. Sometimes the right change happens quickly, Ji-hoon replied. We just had to show the galaxy what was possible. Below them, Earth had become the beating heart of galactic civilization. Ships from across known space docked at orbital facilities that had grown 10 times larger than before the war. But these weren't military vessels or tribute carriers. They were traders, explorers, students, and diplomats coming to participate in humanity's vision of cooperative civilization. The transformation hadn't been easy. Some species had taken months to fully accept the new reality. Others had tried to rebuild their old power structures, only to discover that humanity's network of monitoring stations made such efforts impossible. But gradually, even the most resistant aliens had begun to see the benefits of the new system. The Thraxian homeworld of Drakmor was a perfect example. Before the war, it had been a fortress world dedicated entirely to military production. Thraxian society had been built around conquest and domination, with no room for art, science, or peaceful pursuits. Now, Yoonji walked through the transformed capital city, watching Thraxian children play in parks that had once been weapons factories. The adults worked alongside human engineers, converting military installations into research facilities and cultural centers. Director Yoonji called a Thraxian administrator, approaching with a data pad. The quarterly report from the Education Ministry. Yoonji reviewed the statistics with satisfaction. Literacy rates among young Thraxians had doubled in the past year. They were learning not just their own history, but the histories of dozens of other species. Art and music, once banned as signs of weakness, were becoming popular among Thraxian youth. Any resistance from traditionalist groups? She asked. Some, but it's declining. When they see their children thriving in the new system, most parents abandon their old beliefs. The younger generation especially loves the cultural exchange programs. That was the pattern across human-controlled space. The older aliens, especially those who had held power under the council system, sometimes struggled to adapt. But their children and grandchildren were embracing the new galaxy with enthusiasm. On the former council capital of Nexus Prime, Dr. Bora had established the Galactic Medical Consortium. The research facility brought together the galaxy's best doctors, scientists and healers to tackle diseases and genetic disorders that had plagued alien species for centuries. The Vorthak lung plague has been completely eliminated, she reported during her weekly briefing to Earth Command. The Ethereal Republic's cellular degradation syndrome is responding well to the new treatments. And we've made breakthrough progress on the Meridian fertility crisis. These were problems that had seemed unsolvable under the council system, where each species hoarded their medical knowledge and refused to share with others. But working together, combining different approaches and technologies, humanity and its alien partners were achieving miracles. Any resistance to the medical programs? Asked Minho, less and less. When parents see their children cured of diseases that have killed their families for generations, they tend to become strong supporters of human leadership. The economic transformation was equally dramatic. Changmin had established trade networks that connected every inhabited world in known space. Instead of the Council's old system where resources flowed only to the ruling species, wealth now circulated freely based on merit and need. Agricultural worlds that had been forced to send all their food to alien overlords could now trade with anyone. Mining colonies that had been worked to exhaustion were given time to recover while their populations retrained for other occupations. Manufacturing centers began producing goods for their own people, instead of just export to council elites. Galactic GDP is up 40% from pre-war levels, Changmin reported. More importantly, the benefits are reaching ordinary citizens instead of just government officials. Quality of life indicators are improving across all species. But the most significant changes were happening in the realm of knowledge and culture. The council had maintained power partly by keeping different species ignorant about each other. History, science, and technology were compartmentalized to prevent any group from becoming too knowledgeable or powerful. Now human administrators were opening those barriers. Alien students could study at universities on any world. Scientists could collaborate across species lines. Artists could draw inspiration from dozens of different cultural traditions. The result was an explosion of creativity and discovery that surpassed anything the galaxy had seen before. We've identified 17 new, potentially habitable star systems in the past 6 months, reported Admiral Sun Kyung, more than the Council found in the previous century. How is that possible? Asked Minho. Simple. We're using exploration data from all 47 species instead of keeping it secret. The Ethereals had mapped the galactic core, the Thraxians knew the outer rim, the Vorthak had studied the spiral arms. None of them shared with the others, so they all missed opportunities. The military transformation was perhaps the most visible change. The massive fleets that had once terrorized rebellious worlds were being converted into exploration vessels, cargo haulers, and emergency response ships. War Marshal Claxon's former flagship now served as a mobile hospital, bringing medical care to remote colonies. Any security threats? Minho asked during his daily briefing. Nothing significant, reported General Jae-hyun. A few isolated groups still dream of restoring the old system, but they have no resources and no popular support. Most of the galaxy is more interested in building the future than fighting over the past. The key to humanity's success wasn't just superior technology or military power. It was showing the galaxy's inhabitants that cooperation worked better than competition. Species that had been enemies for centuries were learning to work together. Worlds that had been exploited were becoming prosperous. Fear and oppression were being replaced by hope and opportunity. As the first anniversary of the war approached, representatives from across the galaxy gathered on the new Unity Station for a historic ceremony. Minho, now bearing the title of Terran Chancellor, would address the assembled delegates and officially establish the Galactic Cooperative Alliance. Nervous? Asked Won-Sik as they prepared for the ceremony. No, Minho replied honestly. A year ago, I wasn't sure humanity was ready for this responsibility. But we've proven ourselves. The galaxy is better now than it was under the Council. The assembly hall was packed with beings from across known space. Former enemies sat side by side, working together on plans for exploration, trade, and cultural exchange. Children from different species played together in viewing areas, their natural curiosity unmarked by the prejudices of their elders. Citizens of the galaxy, Minho began his speech. 1 year ago, the Galactic Council declared war on humanity. They believed that might made right, that the strong should dominate the weak, that cooperation was a sign of weakness. The assembled delegates listened in perfect silence. Many of them had been part of that council, had voted to destroy Earth, had believed in the old ways of doing things. They were right about one thing, Minho continued. Might does make right. But they misunderstood what true might looks like. It's not the power to destroy, it's the power to create. It's not the ability to dominate others. It's the wisdom to bring out their best qualities. He gestured toward the viewing screens that showed the transformed galaxy. Worlds at peace, species cooperating, children learning together. The Council ruled through fear for 1,000 years. They achieved stability, but at the cost of progress. They maintained order, but prevented growth. They kept the peace by crushing anyone who dared to dream of something better. Today, we offer the galaxy a different path. Not rule by the strongest, but leadership by those willing to serve. Not conquest of the weak, but cooperation between equals. Not the preservation of old ways, but the courage to build something new. The applause that followed was thunderous, coming from beings who had once been enemies but were now partners in building a better future. As the ceremony concluded and delegates began planning the next phase of galactic development, Minho stood at the observation window looking out at the stars. Earth was visible in the distance, the world that had once seemed so small and primitive to the Council's eyes. Any regrets? Asked Dr. Borod, joining him at the window. None, Minho replied. The Council forced this war on us. We could have responded with genocide, with oppression, with the same cruelty they showed to others. Instead, we chose to show them something better. And it worked. Yes, it worked. The galaxy is at peace. Prosperity is spreading to every world. And species that have been enemies for centuries are learning to be friends. We kept our humanity even in the midst of war.